Hello everyone, this is part 25 of What If Naruto Had a Proper Teacher, and I hope you guys enjoy this video and to like, to subscribe, and check out the playlist, to see more comment down below. Now let's start the intro.
They call me a god. They call me a god. They call me a god.
Jiraiya was in a good mood. True, the first night of having Tsunade in his arms didn't go quite as expected, but he had been there for her. The night had started well with a nice dinner, and when Tsunade had accepted his invitation for some nocturnal amusement, he was beside himself with joy. It was finally happening. What he didn't see coming was her completely breaking down and crying after the first sip of sake he had offered her. The first Hokage's granddaughter was strong. Life had given her some terrible blows, but she had persevered. But she hadn't fully confided the extent of her grief over the loss of her apprentice and the final link to her first love. And so Tsunade had bared her soul and clung to him, and the gallant Jiraiya had stayed with her all night and had not one lecherous thought. When dawn came, Tsunade had untangled herself from Jiraiya and thanked him. She had given him a kiss and apologized. The Hokage could still taste that kiss on his lips as he began his daily work as the leader of a village at war. At least it is a war we are winning. Team 7 would soon be back from their mission. It had been an unqualified success. Over 2,000 enemy shinobi dead, and that included Juro Suzumari. Iwa as a wartime power had been crushed. And just as we defeat one enemy, another one begins making moves. Jiraiya was deeply troubled by the shinobi crossing the border. The two survivors had been interrogated, and between Ibiki and Inoiki they were able to retain no secrets. The problem was that their mission was incredibly vague. They had been tasked with entering one of the towns near Konoha and waiting for further instructions. That was it. There was no purpose in Rain entering a war that the Kumo-Iwa alliance was losing. As a minor village they couldn't hope to swing the tide. If the Akatsuki were behind them, then that would make them a threat, but why would they reveal their hands so openly to the nations? Coupled with no response to the message Jiraiya sent, it was almost as if they were baiting Konoha. His thoughts were interrupted by the arrival of Team 7. They went through a debriefing and Sasuke and Sakura were dismissed. Shikaku joined them and the four began discussing the latest news. Shikaku started, "Kumo hasn't done much, though dozens of their shinobi have crossed over their borders. It is likely they are spies, but they could also be saboteurs and assassins. We have killed a few squads who made their way into Hai no Kuni, but I'm sure we've missed more than a few." There wasn't much they could do about that. They had already increased the number of internal patrols. Naruto looked at the three older shinobi. "So what's next? Are we hitting Kumo again?" Shikaku shook his head. "We could, but I'm troubled about two things." He handed a report to Naruto and Kakashi that outlined Kiba's run-in with the shinobi. "And here is the report about what the Kazekage thinks is Iwa's Bakua Butai, Explosion Corps." Kakashi looked up. "But you think differently. We know of one member of the Akatsuki who could make these attacks with ease. Deodara, missing Nin from Iwagakure." Jiraiya sat back on his chair. "But why?" Kakashi knew instantly. "They want to draw us out. Specifically, they want Naruto. Our work as a rapid response team means they believe we will eventually come out and deal with their bomber. That is when they will strike." Naruto looked at the map of the elemental nations. "But we've also been on the front lines fighting Iwa and Kumo. They may think we'll head back to Kumo or to finish off Iwa." Shikaku made a humming sound in the back of his throat as he considered the possibilities. "This also means they believe they have the shinobi needed to take on your team. The Akatsuki have always seemed to know when and where to strike," the older Nara explained. "They could be underestimating us," Naruto countered. Kakashi considered the ramifications. If they went to hunt Deodara, they could be walking into a trap. If they faced off with Kumo or finished off Iwa, they could have Akatsuki waiting for them. It seemed unlikely to him that they would have the power available to take on his team in three locations. Either they don't have ambushes waiting for us in Iwa and Kumo, or they have access to some sort of teleportation jutsu like the Hiraishin no Jutsu, Flying Thunder God technique. Instead of running around awaiting their ambush, let's end this threat on our terms," Kakashi declared. "You want us to attack Jiraiya questioned. "Hi. We strike at with a large force. My team will go with me along with a number of other highly skilled shinobi. They will either have to abandon or they will fight to hold it. While they have the defensive ground, there will be no more sneak attacks and interference with our battles like outside of Takagakure." Naruto backed his sensei and Jiraiya was eager to discover the fate of his wayward students. Shikaku was the lone voice of dissent. It still seems risky to me. We need more information before we attack. Let some of our spies infiltrate the village before we take action. If we time things correctly, we could even strike while the Akatsuki prepares their ambushes elsewhere. Jiraiya looked set on the course, however Kakashi knew if he supported Shikaku the Hokage would listen. The Godime was not unintelligent and was wise enough to listen to advice amongst the mental geniuses he had selected as his counsel. He honestly didn't think the spies would be successful and it would probably throw lives away. But on the other hand, keeping Team 7 in the village would allow for some more things to play out. Iwa might even surrender as the noose tightened around their village. It would also give Sakura time to improve the Fuinjutsu suits she was creating. And if the absolute worst occurred where Team 7 fell, it would be important to have taught others some of her more carefully secreted formulas. Hokage-sama, I believe we can spare some time. Our enemies are still reeling. If Shikaku can give us some intelligence on what we are facing, then let's let his agents try. Even if they fail, it could reveal something about our opponents. In the interim, my team can stay within the village. Jiraiya stood up and paced a bit. Very well, Shikaku will give you 10 weeks to get us something. If not, we will begin preparations to march with our allies and surround Omegakure. That being decided, Jiraiya dismissed them. Naruto would no doubt want to spend some time with Sakura before she got too wrapped up in her Fuinjutsu ideas. Shikaku would begin briefing the shinobi he had drafted into his intelligence corps and look for ways into the enemy village. Kakashi would ensure he was in tip-top shape for the upcoming clash. The Hokage was deeply concerned about what they would find in Omegakure. The remaining Akatsuki were monsters, to say nothing of the potential of Nagato and Yahiko. Kisame more than deserved his S-ranked status. His sword ate chakra, making him nearly invulnerable to ninjutsu. His strength and kenjutsu made close-range combat difficult. It would be too much to hope for that the tailless beast was susceptible to genjutsu. Deodara was similar to Naruto in the fact that he was an army killer. His massive explosions could wipe out an attack force unless careful preparations were made. Sasori was another S-class foe who dealt with toxic poisons that nearly changed the course of the Second Shinobi War. What else had that monster cooked up in the intervening years? Eventually he forced thoughts of the Akatsuki away. This war had been far more lethal and intense than in the opening days of the Second and Third Shinobi World Wars. Back then allies couldn't always be trusted, so the great powers would take months just to plan and perfect a single assault. Outside of a few key events, most of the war was skirmishing between small groups of shinobi broken up by the rare massive battlefield. Konoha's dominance made the Fourth Shinobi World War a far more deadly but hopefully quick affair. If everything could be wrapped up in less than a year since the invasion by Kumo, Jiraiya would be happy indeed. Since it had been so bloody and deadly, it meant that a person's tomorrows weren't certain. A shinobi had to take what joy they could in the present, because the future was even less guaranteed then in times of peace. With that thought firmly entrenched in his mind, he left a pair of clones in the tower and went out to find Tsunade. ****. Naruto had managed to convince Sakura to break off from her work to go out to dinner with him. Convince may have been the incorrect word. It was more along the lines of Naruto threatening not to allow Sakura to use his clones during her Fuinjutsu experiments that caused her to finally give in. Sakura admitted it was nice to have dinner with Naruto. He cleaned up nicely and they were enjoying a top-tier meal in an extraordinary restaurant. Everything looked new because it was new. The restaurant had been destroyed during the invasion by Kumogakure. No expense had been spared by the owners and it had just reopened a week ago. The fact that Naruto was a Namikaze would give him a spot regardless of the lack of reservation. He was a hero and his reputation was only increasing. Sakura too got a lot of friendly looks. Her seals had protected a number of homes. The waitstaff was kept busy keeping people away from the couple that evening. I'm starting to think we should go out to eat with a henge, Sakura-chan. Sakura smiled. It was a nice turnaround from 3 years ago where Naruto had started using a henge because people despised him. Now he wanted to use it to avoid the constant interruption of people who wanted to thank him for saving the village and bringing glory to Konoha. Looking back, she couldn't believe how stupid she had been back in the academy. How could she have missed how amazing Naruto was? Admit it, you enjoy the attention, Sakura teased. Her date rubbed the back of his head. Don't tell Sasuke, but yeah, I do. Being noticed and acknowledged was my lifelong dream. I don't need everyone to look at me anymore, but it is nice every now and then. They continued eating their meal, glancing at each other several times. Sakura had enjoyed the kisses and intimate time together, but they had not gone beyond that. Perhaps tonight was the night. Sasuke already got to have his carnal relations and was fast on the way to having another wife. Why shouldn't the rest of the team cross that next step in interpersonal relationships? She would take precautions to prevent any unexpected surprises. Until this war is over, I'll need to be cautious. Team 7 shouldn't be apart. Yes, Sakura thought to herself, she would make tonight special. Break. Danzo had enjoyed pulling strings again within the Hyuga clan. It hadn't taken much for them to be prodded into abducting Hanabi. The only difficult part was to make sure the attempt occurred while she was training with her team, in particular Konohamaru. The boy was a strong shinobi for his age, however that wasn't what Danzo had been counting on. He had severed on a number of missions with Hiruzen and well knew the power of Enma. The outcome was never in doubt. The elders had been gelded of their power and Hinata reigned supreme. It was a far better result than the danger of open conflict at a time Konoha needed to be unified. And once we have won this war, it won't take much for me to spark the next one. All I need to do is meet someone well placed in Kirigakure or Sunagakure and they will think the idea to capture and breed Hyuga clan members came from them. Kotoa Matsukami was his greatest weapon. Unfortunately, it could not be used too often, but a mere one or two individuals could lead to the ignition of another conflict. And Danzo knew it was in the Leaf's best interests to crush the other villages. He wouldn't be foolish about it. Kumogakure and Iwagakure must be wiped out completely and Konoha given some time to rebuild. It wouldn't take long, a year or two at most. The unrivaled power of Kakashi's team was a bludgeon that would beat the world into submission. They had even defeated Itachi, someone who Danzo had been concerned about. He had once regretted not being able to recruit Kakashi into Root. It had turned out for the best. His operatives were skilled, deadly and utterly loyal. They weren't innovative and they couldn't inspire. Kakashi outside of Root had done more for the village than he ever could have done under Danzo. He was not too proud to admit it to himself. The Sandaime was hailed for teaching the Sannin, but his reputation as a sensei had been marred with Orochimaru's defection. It was fast becoming clear that even the Sannin would pale to the eventual power of Naruto, Sasuke and Sakura. Future generations will give a new title to Kakashi no Sharingan. It will most certainly be Tensei Sensei, Genius Teacher. His team would change the world and in the shadows Danzo would prop up enemy after enemy for them to eradicate until none would ever challenge Konohagakure no Sato again. Break. Konohamaru was enjoying a meal at Iruka Sensei's home. Iruka had been his sensei in the academy and had checked in on his progress often after he left the academy and took the rank of Jonin. When Konohamaru had blamed himself for the deaths of Izumo and Kotetsu, Iruka had been there for him. A sympathetic ear had been very helpful for him at that time. The meal wasn't that fantastic to be honest, but he was too polite to say anything. Iruka had not married Anko for her cooking. And dango as a main course and for dessert was a bit much. The one-time academy instructor though complimented his wife heartily. That was wonderful, Anko-chan. Anko rolled her eyes and Konohamaru had to bite back a snicker. According to the civilian women, when we get pregnant we start to have cravings that we can't control. But weren't you obsessed with dango before you got pregnant? Anko spiked her killer intent slightly, but the young Chunin simply grinned. He sparred with Enma and that old monkey had killer intent in spades. Besides, he knew that Anko wouldn't hurt him. For all of her fearsome reputation, she was completely loyal to the village and probably even more loyal to Iruka. They continued the meal and the young Sarutobi asked when the baby would be along. Another 5 months according to the medical nin, Iruka answered. Mitarashi let out a groan. 5 more months. Remind me to kill you later, Iruka. Iruka let out a laugh that was tinged with a bit of nervousness. Konohamaru grinned. You don't want to kill your baby's father, Mitarashi-san. We'll see. I'm already feeling my coordination and conditioning going to crap. Iruka hastily changed the subject. So how is your team? The Chunin went over the new dynamic now that Hanabi had joined. It was a good team, one that had a strong mixture of ninjutsu and taijutsu. He was young for the responsibility, but he had been groomed practically since birth for a leadership role. Iruka and Anko gave some good-natured advice and the three enjoyed each other's company. He made it a point to make sure to check on the happy couple. With all the death that had surrounded Konoha, it really was a wonderful thing to see the process of new life emerging. I'll be by at least once a week. Maybe one day I could teach your child the way you taught me, Iruka-sensei. Iruka smiled. That would be a fine thing. I look forward to it. Break. Are you sure he will come? The man who called himself Pain asked. Obito was amused at the question. Nagato liked to be in control, but this was fully Obito's plan. He knew Kakashi would take the bait. The shinobi would always have the mind of an assassin. If you could cut off the head of an organization, the body would die. The attacks by Deodara and the sacrificial shinobi were created for one purpose only. Draw Konoha's eye to Omegakure. Have them bring the Jinchuriki right to their base of operation. It was too risky facing Kakashi's team in the field. Even if they brought the 6 paths of pain, Kisame, Sasori, Konan and Deodara, it may not be enough. If it wasn't enough, Nagato would have to use Gedo Rinya Tensei no Jutsu, Outer Path, Rebirth Technique, and revive the real Madara Uchiha. It would be too risk away from Omegakure. Ensconced in the most protected part of Omegakure by Gofu Kekai, 5 Seal Barrier, the real Nagato would not have anything untoward happen to him. There would be enough time to complete the jutsu and bring out the final weapon against Kakashi's team. Obito would prefer not to use that weapon. He didn't trust the old Uchiha. True, he had saved Obito's life, but he had trusted before and been burned. Far better for him to be in control when the final plans were made. He would recreate the world and bring true peace. To that end he would prepare Omegakure. Pain would wear down the invaders. Here the Akatsuki would make their stand and bring down the final Jinchuriki. Afterward they merely had to wait until the Gobi reformed and their plan would be complete. I'm older than you and a good judge of character. I know how everyone with the Sharingan will act. Kakashi will come and he will bring his squad with him. He may have more support, which is why the additional recruits were necessary. It amused Obito to lie. In no way was he older than the Rinnegan wielder. I will not lose. Even if my old sensei is with him, it will not matter. Obito hoped that was the case. Jiraiya was a dangerous foe, but to his eyes he didn't merit even in the top 3. Sasuke wielded even more advanced eyes than his own Sharingan. Naruto had mastered Senjutsu and had the power of a tailed beast inside of him. But most of all, Obito feared Kakashi. The one who had always bested him at everything. The one that had killed Rin. The one who only grew in power year after year. If I have my way, I won't even see you during the battle. Let the paths of pain or Kisame deal with you. Break. Sasuke didn't have much use for Amy. Nightly they joined together to create an offspring, but beyond that their marriage had nothing that a normal person would view as love. Amy had been humiliated at her own wedding celebration and Sasuke simply didn't care about her. However, his treatment of her did lead to fewer offers of marriage. He had looked through the list and found it full of civilian daughters. Few kunoichi wanted to be the second wife of a man who had treated his first with such little respect. The fact that they would likely have to retire from the shinobi lifestyle in order to raise little Uchiha heirs and essentially become broodmares made those prospects even dimmer. Sasuke made a kage bunshin and sent it to review the family records. He'd choose a civilian girl based on if they had any relatives that had once been shinobi. One way or another, his clan would be strong. It would rise again to prominence. His family had helped found the village and he owed it to the memory of his parents and those who came before to rejuvenate it. Whether that took 2 wives or 20, he would do it. Break. Tezuka Yotsuki, the Godime Raikage, knew that his nation and village were in a perilous position. Owagakure had lost the ability to project its power. Kumo was still strong in numbers, but in quality Konoha would decimate them. He had taken several steps to try to alleviate the situation. First he had tried to bring the samurai into the fold. It was not to be, and somehow Konoha had even convinced Mabui that they had been innocent in their attacks. His second project was coming along very nicely, however it had its own costs. Hundreds of shinobi had been sacrificed on the altar of a particular kinjutsu, but at long last the Kinkaku force was ready. He observed Fuyu as she knelt and gave her report of their readiness. Excellent, Fuyu. Your first assignment will be the assassination of the fire daimyo. Timing will be critical, however. I want you and your team to do whatever it takes to infiltrate Hai no Kuni without being detected. Wait until Konoha readies a major strike and then bring down the leader of their nation. Set fire to the city and finish what was started. Fuyu smiled. High Reikage Sama. Once we are finished with the daimyo, what should we do? The steely-eyed leader of Kumogakur raised his hand and slashed it sideways. I leave that to your discretion. We don't know how they will react, and I will have no way of reaching you. If there are other targets of opportunity, take them. If not, make your way back to the village. Fuyu had her orders and a new mission. If they couldn't fight Konoha in open combat, they would rip out the underbelly of the nation. Banditry had already grown by leaps and bounds thanks to all of the displaced civilians the invasion had caused. Unless the Hokage wanted the economy, reputation and ability of Hinokuni to sustain itself as a national power to deteriorate, he would have to intervene. That would mean shinobi patrolling their own country and not invading Kaminari no Kuni. The plan, like all plans, wasn't foolproof. One attack against the daimyo had already failed. Konoha may not even care about the rest of Hinokuni. That was the possibility that worried her most. Yes, a nation supported its village with missions, metal, food, paper and other necessities. But if they had stockpiled enough, they could end the war before feeling the pinch. After the war's end, there would be no one left to stop them from plundering what they needed from their neighbors. She didn't share her analysis with the Reikage. He had left it to her discretion, and that meant Fuyu would do something purposeful in Hinokuni. She would kill the daimyo and then go down the list of threats that were most dangerous to her village. And along the way she would be sure to take her own revenge as well. Break. The Kazekage had welcomed Kankuro back home. He had completed his job in the field splendidly. With the aid of Konoha, they had decimated Chuchi no Kuni. After Iwa's last disastrous battle, several major towns surrendered. The Earth Daimyo led his personal army to do what their hidden village couldn't. Alas for the daimyo, he didn't have shinobi with him. The army died a pitiful death at the hands of poison in their supplies. 2/3 had died from one of the more slow-acting poisons that Sasori had created before his defection. With their morale crushed by the loss of life, it had been easy for Kankuro to lead the puppet corps in a bloody victory over the soldiers. Now wealth and material was flowing into Sunagakur. It was a good thing too, since the cost of everything had risen. He had summoned his council to review the coded letter that had been delivered from Jiraiya. It was a call to aid in an attack on Omegakur. The Akatsuki were based there and had evidently been collecting the Biju. While Kumo protected its own lands with the defensive posture and Iwa in no position to attack, it would allow them to bring a strong force without leaving them vulnerable. Temari counseled that Konohagakure didn't need any help defeating a minor power like Omegakur. However, she was countered by two other voices. Kankuro was eager to stay on Konoha's good side. He had spoken about the power of the Yellow Flash's heir. We don't want to get on the bad side. If they want us to assist, then I say let's do it. What are the risks? If my sister is correct, we will have taken part in an easy victory and strengthened our alliance. Yura also spoke up. I would be honored to lead the allied effort. Kankuro has proven his competence but has already played a major part. He had earned his rest. Allow me to represent Sunagakur. Baki liked Yura. His advice had always been solid and he was a forward thinker. He had been instrumental in the rebuilding of the shinobi force after the disaster of the Konoha invasion. The man was level-headed and thought things through. Kankuro didn't personally care about leading. In fact, he found the entire thing a distraction from testing his new puppet. I don't mind if you take charge, but I would like to also participate. Baki had the information to make his decision. Yura, you will take a force of 200 shinobi, all Chunin or higher with you. Make your selections and rendezvous with the Konoha forces when they are ready to march. The Kazekage dismissed the council save for Kankuro and Temari. Temari, what will you do when you become Kazekage? Will you destroy the alliance with Konoha? She ground her teeth in annoyance. I won't waste our people's lives like that. But I also won't fetch when they say fetch or sit when they say sit. This entire war was planned in Konoha. You followed all of their commands like a puppet. They were not commands. At every step, Jiraiya Dono has confided in us. If his plans lead to success and power for Sunagakur, it would be foolish not to abide by them. Kankuro quickly added, Temari let go of the past already. Konoha is the future of the elemental nations. We can rise up to the top with them, or we can be crushed underneath them. They don't play around. They have raised monsters of incredible power. I was there. Get over it and think of your village. Baki could see the proud daughter of Sunagakur weigh those words. Finally she said, the history of the Shinobi Wars tell us that alliances never last. What happens when Jiraiya is no longer the Hokage? Will their next leader be so accommodating? When I am Kazekage I won't start a war but I will assert our independence. I will not take the coward's path. Temari's eyes had been on Baki the entire time until she finished her statement staring directly at her brother. Don't call me a coward. When I'm the Kazekage and I ask you to fight a Konoha shinobi, would you do your duty or would you slink away or try to countermand my orders? Fighting Konoha would be suicide, he shouted. You never answered my question. I have always done what my village has asked of me. Do you think I wanted to be around our brother? But like a good soldier I went with him to Konoha. Don't you ever doubt my commitment to Sunagakure. If I put up with Gaara's insanity I can put up with yours. Baki sighed, enough of this. The decision has been made. I understand your concerns Temari but we will continue to honor our alliance with Konohagakure. You are not Kazekage yet and if you don't start realizing the way the wind is marching it will go badly for the village. Temari bowed her head. She wasn't a fool. In no way did she actually want war with Konoha. She wouldn't mind if Kakashi died but she wouldn't risk her people's annihilation. But it galled her. The wound was reopened every time someone mentioned Gaara. Every time someone mentioned Kakashi and talked about how he was a hero to Suna it caused a vicious flash of rage to well in her guts. Logic was logic but she had loved her brother. He never stood a chance. He had been driven insane, lived a life of loneliness and isolation and then had been brutally cut down. And every single other person in the world was fine with it. She carried her resentment of Konoha as a pledge to honor her brother's memory. I understand Baki-sensei. She turned to her brother, be careful. I've seen some of what the Akatsuki can do. They are dangerous. Baki was glad that the meeting ended without the two storming off in opposite directions. While he was confident that Yura would make wise selections for his force, it was his duty as the Kazekage to review those selections. He was no stranger to work though and prepared for more long hours in the month to come. Jiraiya was happier now than he had ever been. His relationship with Tsunade was everything he had dreamed it would be. And he had more inspiration than he knew what to do with for his novels. Good thing too. If she thought I was peeping while in a relationship with her my Hokage hat wouldn't save me. He forced himself back to the task at hand. Around the table were his two principal advisors and his apprentice. They needed to make the final decisions on whom all to send into the attack on Omegakure. Asuma Sarutobi will be included, that isn't in question. The question is what team should he lead? Shikaku pondered the matter for a moment. We could either have him lead the old Team 10 or we could have him work with Neji's team since they had more recent practice working together. Teams had to be balanced appropriately. They couldn't just take every powerful shinobi they had. Konohagakure had to have strong shinobi able to defend it no matter the low likelihood of an attack. The choice on the table was to bring Shikamaru, Ino and Choji or they could bring Neji, Tenten and Rock Lee. The options weren't binary but likely they would want to keep teams together that had fought well together. Objectively, teaming him with Neji would give us a harder punch. And sending clan heirs into Omegakure may not be the best choice given all of the recent changes in clan leadership. Kakashi reasoned. The Hokage agreed and it was decided that Asuma would bring Neji, Tenten and Lee into the fight. I'll let them know to begin training together right away, Jiraiya announced. More shinobi were considered carefully. They wouldn't be sending an overwhelming army since the nature of their enemy would allow them to inflict horrendous casualties. A few hundred shinobi at most would be sent and that made determining who would be going all the more important. We'll want some good medical nin as well. Jiraiya brought that thought to the attention of his advisors. I see why limiting the clan heirs and clan leaders is beneficial, however we should also take Hana Inuzuka with us. Her abilities as a medical nin have grown considerably and she is fearsome in close quarters. Shikaku and Kakashi shared a glance. It wasn't missed by Jiraiya. What? We had someone else in mind to lead the Arayo nin. Kakashi replied. Jiraiya shook his head, no. Tsunade is not coming. The village should always have one of the Sannin in it as a deterrent to attack. Shikaku responded this time, we all agree on that. Naruto saw what they were hinting at. He was surprised his sensei hadn't been more direct but maybe Shikaku had wanted to handle it this way. Pervy Sage, they want you to stay. Explain yourself, Jiraiya demanded. The Hokage and the Hokage to be should not be on the same mission, Shikaku answered. Jiraiya wasn't happy with the argument. It was actually a good one though. It would be foolish to break up the near-perfect teamwork that Kakashi's team exemplified by replacing Naruto's place on the squad with himself. I know Yahiko and Nagato. I can reason with them if it becomes necessary. Kakashi shook his head. More likely you mean you'll let your guard down. They ignored your correspondence and have acted against Haino Kuni. Clearly they don't care about their former relationship with you. Naruto suppressed a wince at the comment. Shikaku put it more diplomatically, a lot can change in such a time frame. They aren't the same people you taught. The Hokage could see how his advisors were working him, Kakashi drawing his ire while Shikaku planted the necessary argument. It was subtle and Jiraiya almost missed it. But he had been around quite a bit longer than the two of them. The problem was, regardless of how manipulatively they planned the discussion, they made sense. It wasn't just about the Hokage and the Hokage's apprentice. Konoha only had 2 senjutsu users. It only had 2 signers of the Toad contract. Unless things were truly dire, Naruto should not be on the same battlefield as he was. Jiraiya briefly considered not having Kakashi's team go at all but quickly dismissed it. Their strength was too critical when fighting the Akatsuki. Have I mentioned I hate you all? Jiraiya groused. Jiraiya could see all of them were glad he hadn't argued the point. They moved on and continued the discussion. Shikaku brought up a good point that it was nearly always raining in Omegakure, so it would be a good idea to bring along a Suiten specialist. Naruto grinned. Iruka-sensei would be great. Another shinobi was added to the list and then they began discussing the merits of some of the others. They decided against bringing either generation of Ino Shikacho. Shikaku was too important to the running of his spy network and they didn't want to send more clan heirs. It was important to send a Yamanaka though for the swift sending of messages through their clan techniques. They settled on Fu, who was a former member of Root. They had not merged with the shinobi forces well and Danzo had taken them to defend the daimyo, but with Danzo back in Konoha they would use him. Jiraiya had been given a list of all of the shinobi under Root and their abilities. One particular ability would be critical. Sai was a prodigy with specialized ninjutsu called Choju Giga, super beast imitating drawing. His ink drawings could come to life and he could draw large flying birds that would allow shinobi to ride on them. After explaining his abilities, Jiraiya said, "This will allow us to counter Deodara." Kakashi hadn't been aware of all of the abilities the former Root shinobi had but would make it a point to review it with Jiraiya. That ability was a hidden gem that had wonderful tactical implications. After completing the list of shinobi who would be going, Jiraiya asked Naruto to pass along a message to Sakura. "I'd like Sakura to help make customized Fuinjutsu suits for anyone who wants them that is going on the mission." Naruto gave him a dirty look. "One day my clones are going to go on strike." The reality was while Sakura came up with most of the ideas, it was Naruto's clones that did the heavy lifting. When he received the memories of hundreds of clones doing seal work, it gave him a nasty headache. He had also been hoping to work on a new jutsu, but with this task ahead of him it was doubtful he would get to it. Even his cage bunshin had limits. But that day isn't today, Gaki. Break. Tenten was glad to have been chosen for such a prestigious mission. Despite the fact they were all Jonin now, they would still be operating on a squad together. Asuma would be taking command based on experience, although Tenten privately thought Neji could take him if they ever fought for some reason. But then again, perhaps she was biased. She let that thought go as she entered into the weapons store. Shinobi were issued a number of weapons when they made rank. If they wanted extra, they would have to pay for it themselves unless they could get a special requisition for more. When she entered the store, there were a number of fine blades on display, but beyond that the walls seemed rather sparse. She waved in a friendly fashion to the store owner, who smiled back at one of his favored customers. "I'd like to put in an order for 200 shuriken, 200 kunai and a kamaiyari." The store owner frowned. My apologies, but I am out of shuriken and kunai and I'm on back order for months." Tenten was a bit startled by that. How could a weapons shop run out of kunai? They were a shinobi staple. Was it poor planning? Had of the merchants who supplied him run afoul with bandits before making it to the security of Konoha? What happened? "Haruno-san purchased my entire stock." Tenten groaned. Of course, her damned kunai scrolls. Yes, they were a creative way of using Fuinjutsu, but it had been her idea first with her Soshoryu, twin rising dragons. It shamed her a bit to realize she was jealous of the younger Kunoichi. Her name was on everyone's lips as the next Tsunade Senju, the next kunoichi to radically change the battlefield. In Tsunade's case, her antidotes to poison made it far less likely for an entire generation of shinobi to delve into those arts. Her medical nin techniques were used all over the elemental nations. In Sakura's case, her kunai scrolls now made even genin dangerous against seasoned shinobi. But I do have a Kamayari in the back if you want it, the shopkeeper stated hopefully. Tenten grumbled a bit but paid for her new spear and left with far fewer weapons than she had hoped to have. Not all was lost though. Despite being a bit jealous of her, they were on friendly terms. And hopefully she could get some of the weapons she was hogging. Break. Sasuke Uchiha had announced his intention to marry again. After sifting through several civilian candidates, he finally settled on a red-haired woman named Sana. After delving into her history, he learned that her grandparents were civilians who had emigrated to Hai no Kuni from the land of whirlpools. Sasuke knew that Naruto's mother Kushina Uzumaki had originally been from there too. He could find no trace of a familial bond between Kushina and Sana, but he liked to think that they were distantly related. Both because it made him closer to being part of Naruto's family and because it would mean any offspring he had with her could potentially inherit some of the traits that made Naruto such a fearsome shinobi. The woman was different from Amy in other ways. She didn't have a reputation for being a gossip and she wasn't full of herself. While she had some fangirl tendencies, she also had a warm smile and a gracious air about her. Yes, being married to her will be nice. Amy hadn't been pleased about him getting a second wife so quickly. Sasuke had merely stated that he would continue to gather wives until his current ones began producing heirs. She had not been happy but had agreed to try again that very night. Kakashi-sensei taught me much. If you wish to get something out of someone, you have but two choices. Threaten to take something from them or offer something they desire. She doesn't want a home full of women who can call themselves Mrs. Uchiha. The wedding would take place before they went to Omegakure. Sasuke wasn't much on formality, however it would be expected that he have a public wedding and introduce the world to his next wife. He would try to keep the guest list small, but he knew it would soon grow out of hand. As long as my team is there, I don't care who else shows up. Break. Sakura and Naruto were hard at work making the Fuinjutsu suits. Customization often took time as it was critical to make sure everything worked properly. And Sakura had a different Fuinjutsu seal she wanted to master. Nonetheless, most of the requests were quite doable. And some of them were kind amusing to the couple. One of the Sakura clones dissipated after reading Rock Lee's request. Sakura would never have the chakra that Naruto or Sasuke could call upon, but she was still a Jonin and could also make use of Kage Bunshin. Naruto, guess what Lee wants? Naruto winced, he could only imagine. And with Lee not being able to use chakra, it would severely limit what he could add to his suit. Most of the seals were triggered by specific amounts of chakra flowing into them. I suppose we could design something that reacts to the gates being activated, he mused to himself. He wants his suit a different color. He wants it to be bright green. Naruto laughed, that's our Lee for you. But he's thinking too small here. He won't be able to activate a lot of the normal seals, but what if we created receiver seals that were time-released when certain fluctuations in a person's energy occurred? We could test it and it could give him a lot of new options when he uses Hachiman, 8 gates. Sakura kissed her boyfriend, you're a genius, Naruto. I just wish I had more time before the battle. There is so much to do, especially my work on the Hiraishin no Jutsu, Flying Thunder God technique. Naruto would love to be able to use his father's signature jutsu and had encouraged Sakura to work on it, but he could see it was frustrating. Sakura continued, I don't know how your dad did it. My equations show the chakra output needed to work the transportation would require chakra on a scale we've never seen. Short-range teleportation isn't out of the question, it would be chakra intensive, but it should work. But being able to warp to multiple places over huge stretches of land. I'm missing something about the base formula and it's driving me crazy. Naruto rubbed her shoulder, come on Sakura-chan. It probably wasn't invented in just a few months. Why not explore the shorter-ranged version? It won't be practical for everything, but if there is one thing I do have, it's chakra. The pink-haired kunoichi thought about it and nodded firmly. You're right, and maybe I'll learn some things about the true Hiraishin as I work on this project. Thank you, Naruto-kun. Naruto's grin could light up a room when he was younger and it still had that same power. Sakura enjoyed being with someone who was so relentlessly optimistic. Nothing kept him down for long. Let's leave your clones to do some more work on the suits while we go for a nice long dinner, just the two of us. He was somewhat startled at her request. Normally he was the one who had to drag her away from her fuinjutsu work. This was a welcome change and Naruto wasn't going to let it go to waste. Kakashi had always known that the Hachiman was powerful, however he hadn't spent the time needed to harness its power. He could unlock Simon, Gate of Life, but that was his limit. Any further and he would do damage to his body. For a shinobi like Kakashi, the idea of short-term gain for long-term hardship was a losing prospect. In order to use the other gates, one had to train their body at a frightening intensity. Guy had trained a minimum of 12 hours a day and had ignored the other aspects of shinobi training. Unlikely he could mold chakra, but everything else wasn't important after he learned how to detect and break genjutsu. I can't actually say he was wrong either. The way he handled the Reikage is proof that the Hachiman can be considered one of the most powerful kinjutsu ever created. Now his team would be thrown into another confrontation with multiple S-rank threats. Kakashi was wary but not worried about Deidara and Sasori. He respected their abilities, but they didn't match up well against the arsenal of ninjutsu he had at his disposal. Kisame, however, was another issue. Not all of his abilities were known, but reports indicated he seemed to shrug off the most powerful ninjutsu. Kakashi's first plan would be to let Sakura or himself trap him in a genjutsu, but one didn't become an S-ranked threat by not having an answer ready to all the major shinobi arts. He wanted to have another trump card to play against the Kiri missing nin. And for that reason he would be devoting long hours to working with Lee, learning how to best open the gates and conditioning his body to tolerate the influx of power. Even if Kisame, Deidara and Sasori were dealt with, they still had to deal with whoever was leading the Akatsuki. It was a very real possibility he would have to face a Rinnegan user. Not having any actionable intelligence about the Rinnegan made the upcoming fight dangerous. He would use every weapon he could to ensure that Konoha would be victorious. Lee noticed him entering into the training area. Yosh. It is good to see you, Kakashi. You were the rival of my sensei and now you will learn his most powerful abilities. Guy Sensei would have wept for joy at this youthful display. Kakashi felt the ghost of an eye twitch come on as he approached his training partner. The wedding between Sasuke and Sana was another great social occasion for the Konoha shinobi. As a general rule, most shinobi didn't marry until later in their careers. Typically once they had settled into an administrative or village-based role. The rarity of marriages was increased due to other factors such as short life expectancy, clan rivalries and the often incompatible views of shinobi and civilians. The fact that it was the last Uchiha getting married for the second time added an additional amount of drama to the whole affair. Despite all this, Sasuke did his best to limit the guest list. The Hokage took pity on him and actually arranged for a festival to occur on the other side of the village to celebrate their recent victories in the field. Most of the civilians that didn't know Sana would be there, while the shinobi who knew Sasuke and his team would be at the actual wedding. The wedding went off without a hitch. Amy was even gracious, which surprised several people. Sasuke was briefly annoyed when Jiraiya gave a short speech. The speech itself was fine until the end, when he began wondering what it would be like to have two women in bed at the same time. Sasuke would have blushed if he hadn't been in full mastery of his body thanks to Kakashi's training. All the same, he allowed his eyes narrow in irritation. Tsunade was cracking her knuckles ominously and Jiraiya quickly wrapped up his parting words. After that there was dancing and mingling. Sasuke could see Jiraiya whisper something to Tsunade that evidently mollified her, and the two began dancing to the traditional music that was playing. Naruto and Sakura also entered the dance floor, as did Sasuke and Sana. The girl was graceful and her lightly freckled face appealed to him. She glided around the floor with Sasuke and it was not unpleasant for the Uchiha. Hinata caused a stir when she began to dance with Kiba. If the elders still had power they would have howled, but with them being defanged they could do little to protest the dance. Asuma sat back and enjoyed a cigar, watching the happy couples dance with a relaxed if somber expression. The dancing would last all night and the shinobi had the stamina to do it, however there were other things to do than just dance. Very soon many in the room would be going on an extremely dangerous invasion. It was a time to catch up, wish each other well and enjoy the company of those you may not see again. Sasuke didn't have to fake the smile on his face. The food and drink were good, His company was pleasant and he was well on his way to rebuilding the Uchiha clan. Life was good. Break. After a few lovely dances with Naruto, Sakura began making the rounds speaking to her friends. She gossiped with Ino just like old times. The two of them hadn't seen much of each other in the years prior and it was quite enjoyable. Ino smiled at her slyly and teased, "Any plan to copy your teammate soon?" Sakura, like Sasuke, was a master of the shinobi arts. She didn't let an embarrassed flush take her face despite Ino's less than polite prodding. "We are enjoying things as they are. But between you and me, I wouldn't mind at all if it one day came to that." Ino pouted at not causing her friend to squirm. It had always been so easy to fluster her. Sakura knew exactly what Ino was thinking and had to grin at the blonde's plight. "And what about you?" Ino shrugged. "I've had my eye out on a few, but they're going to have to make an effort if they want to woo me." Sakura's eyes traveled around the room. "I guess they might just be too lazy to make much of an effort." Now it was Ino's turn to get flustered. As if, "Don't listen to silly rumors, Sakura. This is enjoyable. When the war is over, I definitely need to do more of this." Their conversation was interrupted by Kiba and Hinata coming over to say hello. Sakura politely asked, "How are things with your family, Hinata?" The confident young woman that stood before her was nothing like the girl who had gone to the academy. She moved with the pristine grace of a Hyuga. Her radiant smile was the only aspect of her that could be considered flawed, and those that thought like that weren't worth anyone's time in Sakura's opinion. "Everything is going quite well, thank you for asking." Sakura turned to Kiba, "And what have you been up to?" "I've got a mission to the southeast of Hai no Kuni. I'll be there for a while keeping an eye on the border with the Land of Water. Jiraiya-sama doesn't think we have anything to worry about, but why take chances?" They made some more small talk. Sakura could tell by the way Kiba and Hinata eyed each other that as soon as Hinata felt secure enough in the political situation, there would be another marriage to celebrate. It had been almost 4 years since they had graduated from the academy together and they were all powers in their own right. But unlike shinobi of the past, all of her friends had stayed grounded. This is what a village of shinobi is supposed to act like. We care about each other and support each other. We are the future of the elemental nations. Sakura was happy with her boyfriend. She was happy with her team and happy with her village. She loved her work with Fuinjutsu and everything was going incredibly well. Life was good. Break. Naruto wasn't much for dancing on general principle, but he was very much for dancing with Sakura. He could have gone for hours, but his girlfriend did want to socialize. He saw her go off with Ino and knew girl talk was imminent, and that was his cue to go elsewhere. He walked over to the table Iruka and Anko were dining at. The two of them were enjoying the food as Naruto took a seat. Iruka smiled at his favorite student, one who had far surpassed him in shinobi talent. "Did you enjoy dancing, Naruto?" Naruto grinned, "Believe it. Sakura is great at dancing." Anko mocked, "At least one of you is good at it." The Yondaime son wasn't bothered by Anko's sometimes caustic remarks. That was just Anko being Anko. And while he didn't detect any flaws in the memorized dance moves he had used, it probably had not been done with much flair. Jiraiya had given him enough ribbing about Team 7 being Kakashi bots to know that at times his movements were a bit too crisp and aligned to really be called a dance. They made small talk for a bit and then Anko pinned Naruto down with a stare. "Naruto Namikaze, I'm not able to go on the mission with my husband, so you had better bring him home alive." Iruka made to protest, but Naruto raised his hand. "Anko, you know I can't guarantee anything. Kakashi says that making promises you can't be sure to keep causes more grief than it can cure." His blue eyes sparkled with the hardness of diamonds. "I will do my utmost to protect everyone I am with. I vow to save any shinobi from the village ahead of my own life if that is what it takes." Iruka is no exception to that. Anko breathed out heavily. She looked embarrassed. "Sorry, Naruto, I had no right to badger you about this. I blame the pregnancy. My emotional control is shot to hell." Iruka put a comforting hand on Anko's shoulders. Naruto decided to liven up the air a bit by grinning at Iruka, "So since Anko is handling it so well, when are you going to go for baby number 2 after she finishes with this one?" Iruka laughed while Anko threw her fork at Naruto's head. He caught it effortlessly and gallantly handed it back. "Lady Mitarashi, I believe you may have dropped this." He made his voice sound like one of the stuffy figures in Jiraiya's books. Anko threatened to disembowel him, but humor sparkled in her eyes. Naruto was happy for the couple. They were bringing in new life to the world, and despite Anko's reputation, he knew she loved Iruka-sensei. He wished them the very best. Reflecting back on his own situation, he couldn't be happier. His girlfriend was an amazing woman. She sometimes did get too obsessed with her fuinjutsu, but no one was perfect. He loved teaching at the academy, and his team had never been more in sync with each other. Life was good. Break. Kakashi could barely keep his body from trembling. The excruciating conditioning he was putting himself through was playing havoc with his body's fine-tuned operation. He would need to rest completely a few days prior to the mission. He wasn't one to mingle often, but many of his peers were here. Asuma was morose but hiding it well. Kakashi considered his choice an interesting one. When he had lost everything, he had become depressed and retreated into his one hobby and had adopted his fallen comrade's mannerisms. When Asuma had lost Kurenai, he didn't sink into depression. No, he had leapt into rage. The man was ready to come to grips with the enemy. He was poised to deliver death at any moment. Neither was healthy, and Kakashi entertained himself debating which one did more damage. He scanned the room and approached his friend Shikaku. The two of them had worked well together. They hadn't always seen eye to eye, so to speak, but they had helped guide the village over the last 3 years. The man's keen insight and intellect were always a pleasure to interact with. Currently, Shikaku was lost in conversation with the other two members of Inoshika Cho. Kakashi raised his drink in salute and continued looking at the shinobi present. He saw Yugao dance with Hayate, one of the rare times he had seen her outside of her normal Anbu uniform. He wished them well and had a brief moment of wondering what might have been if he had approached her before Hayate had. The Hitaki name will die with me. I have no bloodline to pass on, it isn't important. There are other clans to lead Konoha. He saw Sasuke approach with his new bride. The girl did look similar to Kushina. Let me formally introduce you to my sensei, the man who shaped me. Sana bowed low. Good to meet you, Hitaki-sama. Ma, none of that now. Kakashi is just fine. Inwardly, Kakashi was pleased by Sasuke's words. He had done well by them. The cold exterior that Sasuke had was beginning to melt. Oh, he had still had control of his emotions, all of his students did, but now he was learning to show them and enjoy them when it was appropriate. Kakashi saw all of the current movers and shakers of Konoha. Even with the gut-wrenching losses Konohagakure had suffered, he knew that the village was stronger than ever before. The new generation had boldly taken up the reins and was transforming Konoha into the village that Minato-sensei had always dreamed it could be. And his team was leading the charge into a promising future. His team respected him. They respected each other. His village was strong, and he knew that both his sensei and his father would be proud of him. Some might think that wasn't enough to say one was happy, but for Kakashi Hitaki it was. Life was good. Break. Jiraiya had rolled over, completely spent. It was the night before his Tsunade was to leave with the Konoha force for Omegakure. He looked at the wondrous nude vista beside him. All of his childhood dreams were coming true. He had become the Hokage. He was lying naked beside the girl of his dreams. Peace was so close he could taste it. It was all over for Iwagakure except the curtain call. Kumogakure was still a threat, but against the alliance of smaller villages, Sunagakure and his own village, they wouldn't stand a chance. All that was left was Omegakure. And it scared the hell out of him. Yahiko had taken to his training well, but it was Nagato who had mastered all 5 elemental jutsu. He personally knew of only 2 people who had ever done that. One was his own sensei and the other was Kakashi no Sharingan. If Nagato was alive and if he was in charge of the Akatsuki, it would be the most dangerous fight Tsunade had been in a long while. He longed to throw caution into the wind and change the plans at the last second. He could go himself and keep Tsunade safe. I can tell you enjoyed it earlier, but the look on your face now makes me wonder, Tsunade told him. Jiraiya sighed. I'm sorry, Tsunade. I'm just worried. I have a bad feeling about this mission. Tsunade gave him a light kiss. Jiraiya, Arayo ninja wa keshite shotai no naka de seigo made shindi wa naranai. Jiraiya, no medical ninja shall ever die until they are the last of their platoon. Did you just quote the 3rd clause of the medical nin code to me? The one that you wrote? Tsunade smiled. It doesn't make it any less true. I will be cautious for your sake, but I'm coming home from this one. Kakashi's students are monsters in their own right. They have eclipsed the Sannin. They will be fine. We will have Suna at our side as well. Don't underestimate Asuma Sarutobi either. Ever since Kurenai's death he's thrown himself into training. Trust us. Jiraiya kissed the most beautiful woman in the world and did as she asked. Break. Obito knew without a doubt that Kakashi would be in charge of the assault on Omegakure. It was like a shogi match but with lives as the pieces. Normally Pain would handle the day-to-day operations of the Akatsuki, but for this he wanted to take a personal hand in it. He looked over the resources that he had at his disposal. There were roughly 300 shinobi Omegakure could call up, however none of them were particularly useful. The battle to defeat Hanzo and the wars prior had destroyed much of the elite of the village. They had a few jonin but nothing special. Zetsu wasn't what he considered a front-line fighter, but his clones could operate at low jonin strength and he could create a score of them. And then there were the Akatsuki themselves. The originals. Left were Kisame, Deodara, Sasori, Konan and Pain. Along with them the Kaiten user Mui, the Crystal Release user Guren, the Kenjutsu specialist Daimunashi and one of Orochimaru's experiments Kidomaru. Pain doubted the abilities of the Konoha forces. Obito knew he was certain that they would not be able to defeat him. He needed to curb that hubris before it cost them everything. To that end he would have individual paths of Pain join some of the teams so he could see from every angle just how powerful their opponents were. And if some of the paths should fall, well they could just be revived by Naraka paths. The animal path could summon the defeated paths and then the Naraka path could revive them. The important part was to keep those two paths safe. To that end he created a base team. Sasori would be partnered with Konan, Guren and Kidomaru right outside of the Gofu Kekai 5 seal barrier. A pair of Zetsu clones would also be with them. Obito himself would be within the barrier with Nagato and the original Zetsu. No doubt Deodara would complain about being separated from his partner, but his ability to bomb the invading Konoha forces would necessitate him being airborne and not in a fixed position. The first team that would confront Kakashi would be led by Kisame, the Asura path and the human path. Joining them would be Mui and Daimunashi. The combination of abilities didn't necessarily mesh well together, but the different fighting styles would give Pain ample examples of how Kakashi's team operated against a variety of threats. While that initial confrontation was taking place, Deodara would be in the air along with the Deva path and the Preta path. They would fly on the clay constructs Deodara created and the flying creature the animal path would have previously summoned. From the air they would rain down destruction on the invading Konoha forces. Konan had also placed a number of paper bombs all around Omegakure. Obito felt it was a good solid plan. Kakashi had always had his number in tactical and strategic games, but this time, the time that it would count, he would be the victor. Break. Anko had dreaded this day. She didn't know why, but Iruka's mission filled her with fear. They had made love the night before despite her pregnancy, and for some strange irrational reason Anko felt like it would be their last time. Must be this fucking pregnancy. Tsunade needs to get off her ass and make some new medical breakthrough to make this easier. Less than an hour before Iruka had to go, Anko stopped him in his preparations. Iruka, when you get back from this mission I want to ask a favor of you. What is it? Let's stop taking missions outside of the village unless it's absolutely critical. Let's make this the last time we're apart like this. Iruka smiled. He was full of love for his wife and their unborn child. This was a side of Anko that he had only glimpsed at before. But if this was what she wanted, then he would be glad to give it to her. Teaching at the academy was still a passion of his. He could be content with this arrangement. He embraced her. One more mission. And then I'll be home. One more mission, she whispered back. That will be it for this video. If you want more, comment down below, like, subscribe. And see you guys later.